We're going to talk about investing in real estate. By far, one of my favorite topics.
Okay. 22.
Chapter 22. Why should you invest in real estate? It says to look at figure 22.1. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, let's look on page 424. Sometimes I get dyslexic with numbers. All right. Why should we invest in real estate?
Well, the advantages are above average rates of return,
Mm-hmm.
leverage of borrowed money to purchase real estate, greater control over investment, and tax benefits.
Yes.
Without looking at the book, I would have said something like, because real estate appreciates, or everything else depreciates over time.
Yes. Yes. And essentially, you're not making the payment. It is an investment that is paid for by someone else. So,
Right.
and ultimately, it will generate income for you later on down the road.
Anytime there's repairs, you're going to come out of pocket for that.
Yeah, that is a disadvantage, but hopefully you're in a position where you don't have, that you're not, a roof, yeah, that's got to be replaced. But luckily that's not a yearly deal, or at least you certainly would hope not. And the same with, you've got out of pocket as far as insurance and that, but hopefully you're generating enough at least to cover that. But ultimately, in the end, it's going to make money. It's going to make money for you. The disadvantage it talks about is expensive. It's not highly liquid. You got to actively manage it, and there's a high degree of risk. I'm not sure about the high degree. Yeah, I guess it would be bad if everything was empty all at the same time, but the likelihood of that, and especially if you diversify, is not going to be very likely.
So how are you making any money unless you're able to purchase the property outright? Because that loan that you use to buy that property is being paid by the rent, most likely.
Okay.
So how are you making any money?
Okay. You got to do it either multiple ways. Either you've got to stagger your investments where, like, this one's paying off, this one's paying off, this one's paying off, or over time, you may not be making any money up front, but in the end, they've just bought a $70,000 house for you that you can sell, and you truly don't have, your out-of-pocket investment is not that high, or you hang on to it, and you're getting, $500 to $700 a month on something that you didn't purchase technically to begin with. You didn't make the payments. You've got a renter sitting in there making the payments for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you assume the risk in the sense that if you have a renter that can't pay the rent, but at the same time, the time that the house is empty or what have you versus the time that it's full, and they're making the payments on it, which is knocking down your principal and interest, in the end, your out-of-pocket expense is not going to be as much as what ideally the property is worth, and that you didn't have to come out of pocket for.
So ideally, you need to have several properties to make real money.
Yes.
Not just to be squeaking by, but to be comfortable. You'd have to have at least 3 or 4 properties.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes. Yes. And there's, I don't know if you listen to any podcasts out there. I mean, there's guys out there who have all different kinds of theories on what you should be investing in, where do you get your most return on your investment. Some think that a apartment complex is the way to go because it's essentially one building and you've got multiple units. Everybody's not going to be leaving at the same time. Whereas a house, one house, either it's 100% occupied or it's 100% empty, So, some are of the camp that houses are the worst. You should never invest in those. And some people think they're great because it's not as much upkeep. You'd rather manage 5 people than 25.
And Hartsel is definitely a good idea because there's there's nothing on the market that's worth living in that stays open for longer than 3 or 4 days. It gets snatched up because our school system,
Mm-hmm.
the safety statistics. I think there's been one person,
Mm-hmm.
one police officer has had to pull his gun in 10 years.
That's great.
There's a bank robbery back in
Yeah.
the 90s, and that's just, I don't understand why my mother-in-law and father-in-law don't own property.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand at all. They have all the tools to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They just decide to manage property for other people instead.
I don't know.
I need to talk to them about it.
Yeah. But, that's one way to look at it. But, I don't know. I toy around with all the time, like, what is the best investment? I don't know. One thing I do know for certain is land is not going to grow. It's a limited resource. And, just like Hartselle and Coleman, our area is growing. We have good schools, low crime rates, blah, blah, blah. So for those reasons, it's hard to find rental houses in our area as well. I don't know that they would be snatched up in 3 days. That's pretty impressive. But, around here it's pretty good. It's hard to find homes zoned in the city. That's the other thing that makes it difficult. Excuse me.
Do you own real property?
My one thing that's a negative that I do want to talk about is it's not highly liquid. So, if you're wanting to make cash in a hurry, it's not like you can just plop a house on the market and expect it to sell like hotcakes, or an apartment complex. It's going to be a while that it's going to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got to look at it from that perspective too. You got to think about it. Do you need something that's going to be highly liquid and fast, or is it something it's a long-term investment? You've got different kinds of property you can invest in. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. You can manage for appreciation of cash flow, looking at the appreciation affected by inflation or appreciation affected by the intrinsic value. One thing that you can also think about is
Intrinsic value.
Yeah.
Person's individual choices and preferences for a given geographic area. Oh, okay. Location. That's why they say that.
Exactly.
In real estate, location's everything.
Exactly. But you have to be mindful too about the neighborhood and how it's going to change over time.
Right.
You might invest in a house today, and 30 years from now, it could be a dud because of changes in the neighborhood.
Like what's happening in Chicago and Detroit right now?
Tell me, I don't know what's going on. Like just different areas, house values going down, or
like the whole, like people are just abandoning their homes because the crime's gotten so bad. And in Detroit mainly, I mean, Detroit is nothing but a bunch of criminals and people like hitting scrap metal, and there's no real major jobs. All the auto dealers closed down in Detroit, which left just a financial fallout. And
right.
So there's houses in the middle of town that have been abandoned for 10 plus years.
Yeah. And you got to protect your investments too. You got to watch the market and know when to get out. You don't want to be abandoning your property by any stretch. So you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
Yeah.
It's one of the main things. Unimproved land, you've got investors who can speculate in purchases of either agriculture or undeveloped land located in what they expect to be a major path of growth. Highway 157, I grew up in a neighborhood right behind there, and I can remember asking my parents all along that way, like, why don't you buy some of this land? Well, one of the things they talked about is there were major electrical wires that were going through there, and they're like, this land will never be developed. Oh my gosh, well, look up there now. I mean, course, granted, that's been 30 plus years ago, but now we've got Walmart, all kinds of shopping going up on Highway 157. So you may have to sit on it a while. And if it's just empty land, unless you can rent it or lease it for grazing or whatever, you may be sitting on it for a while. You're on that type of thing. You're looking towards future growth. Lenders may be reluctant to lend on unimproved land, and land cannot be depreciated and may even be even more illiquid than improved land. Expertise is needed to make investments in unimproved land, and it can still be a little risky. So, may have a hard time getting rid of it, even if you do get it. Income. A person who wishes to buy and personally manage real estate may find that rental income property is the best investment. Talking about a cash flow objective. It's generally spendable. Think about cash flow. And the amount of income or rent, it depends on a variety of factors. Investors strive to keep operating expenses reasonably low, and mortgage payments can affect the cash flow. So if you pay a lot of money for it, you may not have a lot of income coming off of it at first. You got to look at investment opportunities as well. What are income producing properties, and use your due diligence, which is the exploration of the benefits and drawbacks of the investment. Some people are of the opinion that you should not invest in like strip malls and that kind of thing. That's a particular niche, commercial real estate. I don't know anything about that, but people have different opinions on that. What is leveraging?
Use of borrowed money to finance an investment.
Yep, that's exactly what you're doing. The goal is you want to make as small a down payment as you can. You want to pay a very low interest rate, or the lowest you can find, and spread that mortgage payment out over as long a period as possible. It can provide a return that reflects the results of market forces on the entire original purchase price, but is measured only against the actual cash invested. There's a high degree of leverage, which means the greater risk for the investor and lender, because property values may drop and the investor may be unable to pay the financial costs. Typically, what are the interest rates? If you're buying investment property, the interest rates are typically higher than like a personal residence, but not by huge amounts, but it's something to consider. What is equity buildup? Equity is going to be the amount of money that's actually put down, whether it's if you're initially putting down money for it, or it can be done through repayment. The gain in property value is through the appreciation. Okay. But when you're not going to realize any of that until it's either paid off or sold. Pyramiding is when you use one property to drive up the acquisition of other properties. Pyramiding through sale versus pyramiding through refinance. So in other words, if you've got paid off properties or properties with a high degree of equity, you can leverage those to buy more properties. So basically you start with one and then you just keep building on it.
Two methods, through sale and through refinance. What is that? I don't understand.
Okay.
Through refinance, how do you do that?
Because you can typically, or sometimes, let's look here. The pyramid through refinance is the use of the value of the original property to drive the acquisition of other properties while retaining all the properties acquired. The investor refinances the original property and uses the proceeds of the refinance to purchase additional properties. These properties are refinanced, enabling the investor to acquire further properties. By holding on to the properties, the investor may delay the capital gains taxes that would result from the sale. So in other words, instead of reselling it, you're refinancing it. Either you can extend the life of the loan, or it would just depend on the circumstances how you would use that equity or cash that's available to make a down payment on your next property, whatever that may be.